Hi, my research dragons. Now we're entering week 3, and we're going to get a little more into some of the things that you have to do for your research project. So at the end of week 7, you'll be turning in your research project, which will be more like a proposal, but you will have to have certain things in it. And that's what we're going to go over today. We're going to go over some of the more specific, some of the more difficult things. And if you have any questions or concerns at all, you can always call me, and I'll be happy to go over with you. And I'm going to put some stuff up on the Moodle so that you can see what it is. So I'm also going to put up a final project so that you can see in week 7 what it is that your thing should look like. Now, you won't have any results in there unless you actually go ahead and do the research, but at least the format of what you have to do will be apparent, because you'll have like it looks sort of like between a proposal and a summary paper. And a summary paper is something that you do when you take to a conference. So it'll look something between the two, and if you don't analyze data, then it will look more like a proposal. And if you do actually analyze some data, then it will look more like a summary paper. So some of the things that you're going to have to identify in that, especially right away for the assignment for week 3, which you will do 2 articles that you will be using in your paper, in your project. So from here on out, you'll be doing stuff that will go into your paper, okay? And you'll be talking about them so that you will prepare yourself for what's coming, okay? And all of these things that you're going to be learning about each week will go into it, and they'll be more research-oriented than theoretical, as the course was designed for. So that's what we'll be doing today in a couple of videos, maybe 2, I hope. So let's just get into it. So the first thing you have to know for week 3 is you're going to have to identify whether the findings in your articles that you choose are socially and or statistically significant. So a finding can be socially significant, statistically significant, neither, or both. Okay? So something that is statistically significant is reported in the article, and it's at 0.05. You'll see P equals 0.05, 04, 03, 02, 01, 001, 0001. Sometimes it's just like 0.000. Those are all statistically significant, okay? What makes it socially significant is the applicability of that research. Does it apply to anything? Can you use it to anything? Does it really matter in the world so far that you can see? And I think on one video or one paper I wrote something like the number of eyelashes between elephant A and elephant B. Does it really make a difference? Socially significant? Probably not. We probably don't run around every day caring whether or not elephants have more or less eyelashes. There may be a statistically significant difference, but does that mean it's important? Okay? Later on, so that's pure research. Later on, someone might discover that eyelashes in all creatures do something to protect the eye, and you could use that as a future disease preventative or something like that. Then it would become socially significant. But as of right now, nobody really runs around thinking about, oh, I wonder if that elephant has the adequate number of eyelashes and how it relates to me. Okay? So that would be statistically significant, but not socially significant. Sometimes people do studies and it's not socially significant, it's not statistically significant. Does that mean it's a bad study? No, because anything you inquire about is good and necessary and fantastic. So there you go. It can be both, socially significant and statistically significant. And it can be one or the other, socially significant, but not statistically significant. And I gave that example as the effectiveness of a male versus female police chief. There's no statistical difference between the two of them, but socially it's important because it shows that there's no difference between a male and a female police chief, so it doesn't matter which one you hire. It's fine. You can't just go with a bias thing that says males are better police chiefs, because maybe it doesn't make any difference, okay? So those are examples of socially and statistically significant that you will have to identify in this week's assignment. For the last assignment, though, you're going to have to identify a myriad of different things, and you're going to have to put that in your paper. So we're going to talk about some of the things that you're going to have to identify. First of all, the theory. I know this past week in week 2, they talked about theoretical this or theoretical that. But a theory is really nothing more than a question that we have. It's a question, and then we have come up with this big idea of what it might mean, you know? And the research is going to prove whether or not those questions are actually true. So the theory always asks a question, and I'm going to show you when we show some designs of research here, how the theory asks a question. So like you could be sitting there saying, like yesterday I planted my garden, so I put in all these different vegetables. And I'm asking things to myself like, how close should I put these tomato plants? Is it going to matter if I put these tomato plants closer together? What if I plant a lot of them? Will I get more if they're further apart and they spread more? And then you have come up with these theories like, no, maybe they need room. And these are all theories and hypotheses that you could test. And don't worry, I'm going to use that as an example. Okay? So every single thing that you wonder about every day, you can generate a theory. And some people do research their whole lives, and it's nothing more than theoretical. Okay? Like the example I gave of Kohlberg. He was very non-empirical in his research. He had all these big theories. Freud had theories that were not empirical. Piaget, a lot of big researchers. Quantitative researchers, such as myself and some other researchers, say that that's a good starting point, but you really need to do more. You can't just sit there and say, well, I wonder if this vaccine would be better than that vaccine. Okay, let's actually test it to see if they are. Okay, so that's one of the issues with qualitative research that some of us have. It's a good starting point, but if you don't test whether or not your theories are true, then you'll never know. And okay, so let's test some things. So the theory is a question. Hypotheses are specific directions that you're going to make. So you say, here's vaccine A and here's vaccine B. Vaccine A does this, it works on this part of the body. Vaccine B works on this part of the body. Vaccine A is a preventative. Vaccine B is a reparative, or it helps the body repair itself. Which one is better? Okay, so that's your theory. And then you say, well, I think A is better because of 1, 2, 3. And I think B is better because of 1, 2, 3. So unless you test them, you will have no validation as to which of your theories is correct and which of your hypotheses are correct. So that's what we're doing with theories and hypotheses. So the next thing you have to do is you have to have independent variables. Independent variables are the items in your study that you are comparing. You're comparing gender. You want to know the difference between males and females about something. Or you want to know age. What age group is going to be best? So you break up different age groups into different sections. Those are independent variables because you're studying those things and you're comparing them. Independent variables always are comparative. Dependent variables are what you're measuring, the thing that you're looking at, okay? I'm interested in gender effects on childcare. Who's the better parent? This is a legal question, right? You see this every day in custody cases. Who's the better parent? Does it vary by gender, okay? So those are the theories. Who's the better parent? Does it vary by gender? Your hypothesis would be, yes, one is better than the other, and I think males are better than females, whatever it is that you're going to do. And then you're going to test those, okay? So your independent variable is gender. And then you have to define what you mean by gender. So traditionally for gender, you're what we call empirical realizations. Or you might have heard it be called operational definitions. I prefer empirical realizations, are how you're going to define your independent variables. So if your independent variable is gender, then you're going to define it as male or female. Very easy. That's your definition. Remember I told you last week the secret weapon is in how you define your independent variables. So when it comes time to your dependent variables, you also have to define that. That's important. So if you're saying, what's a better parent? Wow, well, that's a lot of ways you can define what you mean by better parent. So both independent variables and dependent variables, the thing you're measuring, have to be specified. You have to have an empirical realization. So for qualitative research, if you were doing this question, this research, and you want to say, who's a better parent? I'm going to study gender, and I'm going to see which one is the better parent, male or female. And for my better parent dependent variable, I'm going to use more caring, more loving, more supportive. But for each of those, you have to define, what do you mean by caring? What do you mean by loving? Does that mean affection? Does that mean helping with homework? What do you mean by those things? So those are the things that you're going to measure. So for everything you have that you're going to compare, independent variable, and everything that you're going to measure, dependent variable, you have to define it. You need an empirical realization to define it. So those are things that you're going to have to put in your final paper. So your final paper is going to be your topic. You're going to do a lit review. And you're going to talk about the research that's relevant to your topic. And then at the end of the lit review, you're going to have what we call empirical questions. Your empirical questions are the main questions that you have about your study. Let's continue on with the who's a better parent thing. So your first empirical question should be, based on the research that I've been doing in my lit review, you're not going to say I, you're going to say, based on the research the author has examined in the lit review, the author feels that the author has the following questions. 1, who is a better parent, males or females? And then you're going to have a dependent question maybe. When we examine, when the researcher examines better parent, several definitions come up. Support for academics, support for extracurricular activities, physical affection, happiness, financial stability. Any of those things could be your dependent variable, but you have to put those in your empirical questions. Empirical questions are the main questions that you have about your studies. The first couple of questions should be about your independent variables, and then you should throw some other ones in there. It's not uncommon for you to have 4 or even more than 4 empirical questions at the end of your lit review. And then you're going to, for one of the weeks, I can't remember which week it is, you're going to create a questionnaire or some way that you're going to measure your dependent variable. So you'll have to actually create a dependent variable, a questionnaire or a way to measure what it is that you're going to measure, okay? So let's keep going with the better parent. If you decide that better parent means a host of different things. You've brainstormed and you say, I think affection is important. I think financial stability is important. I think attendance at sporting events is important. I think providing a nurturing environment by cooking for them, by having a clean house, by having a good job, by all of those different things, then you're going to include a question on each one of those in your questionnaire. I'm going to put some questionnaires up so that you can see what they are. But you're going to create one, either a questionnaire or a way of measuring what it is that you're talking about in your dependent variables. So are you going to do perfect research, or are you going to propose perfect research? Probably not. This is probably, one of your few research projects that you've ever done. So everybody makes mistakes doing research, and some of them are big and some of them are not. If you make a little mistake that you can live with in the study, like, oh, that's a little mistake, I should have fixed that, and it's going to affect my results a little bit, but it's not going to affect them to the point where I have to throw away the whole study, then we call that an artifact, okay? A little artifact. A more serious mistake, one that can just say, okay, your study's worthless, it's got to go, because you didn't find anything, and what you did really screwed up your study. We call those a confound. Someone put on a discussion about a study that they were examining, and it looked at mothers and children in Haiti after an earthquake, which was really a good idea to do the study. But then the researchers confounded the study by doing one thing with the mothers and doing a different thing with the kids. They did not do equal treatment between the groups that they were comparing, and that seriously confounds the study because you invite in other explanations for whatever data that you get. So that was a confounded study. The idea was great, but what they did was made it empirically invalid. So you want to make sure that when you do your research, that your research is not flawed to the point where you have to throw it away. So those are the things you're going to have to do for your test, and then you're going to have to do designs. On the next video, we'll talk about designs.